you're thinking that no matter where he goes, he's leaking this vitality, and all you have to do is follow it far enough, and there he'll be. I was so confident for a while there that I kept looking up, expecting every second to see him, to see his white belly shining in the sun. And then the blood began to run out, and I started to get scared. He had run down that open flat maybe 300 yards, then swung hard toward the river through an opening in the cane. The trail was still fairly easy to follow there, where he turned to the west, so I stopped to smoke a cigarette. I told myself not to push him and get his adrenaline pumping again, but I guess I just really wanted the comfort of the blood while it was still strong. Beyond that point, it just stopped. I mean, like all of a sudden. I spent 30 minutes on my hands and knees. Finally, one little drop a good 100 yards from the last blood, and it was no more than a dab, like a smear of lipstick on a leaf. I could tell from where it was that the buck had gone into a thicket, so I followed him in and came on an opening, like a little room in the cane. As soon as I stepped into it, I saw a wet place in the leaves. I knelt and touched it, and my fingers came away red. The ground was soaked, Billy. The leaves all matted together. I figured he must have stood there until he saw me coming, for that was it. I never found another sign of him. No blood, no tracks, nothing. He'd probably been lying down, Billy said. A wound like that'll get all plastered with leaves and dirt, which is why it didn't bleed anymore. You look real good all around. The whole damn day. How far was that from where you shot it? Couldn't have been more than 400 yards. Yeah, you could have covered that before you lit your first cigarette. If he went down that quickly, I'd say he was hit pretty hard. Sounds like to me like you pushed him too hard, Jim. I know. I kept telling myself to be patient, but I just couldn't wait. The whole thing was a bad case of buck fever, I guess. When that buck turned around and stopped, right in front of me, I just knew I had him, and I couldn't believe it. I could see that rack in the back of the truck and everybody coming out to admire it and asking me to tell about it, and I just lost it. I was scared to death he was going to bolt any second. I could see him gathering himself, and I couldn't stand the thought of losing him. It was like somebody was handing me something I wanted more than anything else in the world, and all I had to do was not drop it. I stood up. Anyway, that's the story. But what about the pig? Oh, yeah. Well, I thought you'd be in by then, so I decided to go back to the pole bridge and get something to eat, thinking maybe we could go back to the swamp in the afternoon and look some more. But when I got to Stevens Meadow, Charlie was sitting there in Jack's blazer, and while I was telling him about it, Jack came out to see. I was really surprised at how sympathetic they were, Billy. I guess they thought that I was going to start crying or something. Probably was. They wanted to go back down there right then, so that's what we did. All the way down Stevens Road, Jack kept saying, "Don't worry about it, Jim. We'll find your deer. He's dead as a hammer right now, I guarantee you. You just show me the last place you found blood." Anyway, I killed the pig when we got back down there. They were making a wide circle toward the river, and I decided to stomp through that thicket where the buck had bedded down. I went in the backside, and almost immediately something flushed right at my feet, lunging and crashing through the cane. At first I was sure it was the buck, and it sounded too thick for a deer. But it sounded too thick for a deer. Then it stopped. I brought my rifle up, and the scope fell on something squat and black, and I shot without thinking. It was a sow. "Good you got meat," Billy said. Well, I guess so. But after I dragged it out of the cane, I was sitting there waiting for Jack and Charlie to come up. I looked at those ugly little eyes and the dried mud caked in its bristles and thought what a different thing from a deer a pig is. When I said that, something wrenched free and began to rise to the surface. For a moment I was afraid that it was going to come out in words, as inevitable as a belch, but I clamped my jaw and swallowed hard. Then I said, "Billy, I missed that buck because I was trying to snatch something." "How much did the sow weigh?" he asked. I wondered if he had heard me. "I don't know, 150 pounds. Felt like 300 by the time we got her to the truck. Dragging a pig is good therapy." I had help with that, a lot of help as a matter of fact. Jack and Charlie probably did more dragging than I did. It was getting warm by then, and Jack was all red in the face and sweating like a pig himself. He said a deer is slick and lays close to the ground, but a pig tends to plow the ground like a sack of cement. I think Charlie was getting a little worried about Jack because Jack really was blowing hard. Charlie wouldn't let Jack relieve him when it came his turn to drag. When we finally got the pig out to the road, Jack put his heavy old arm around my shoulder and said, "Jim, it's a hell of a lot harder to drag somebody else's pig than it is your own." I told him, "Yeah, I remember. I helped him drag one out my first year in the club." I wanted him and Charlie to have this one too, but Jack said, "No, it's the Lord's will for you to shoot that pig, a consolation prize for losing the buck." He lost one like that himself last year, you remember. And he said he knew how I felt. He even wanted to go back to the swamp after we ate lunch and look some more. I was going anyway, but I hated for them to give up their whole day of hunting on my account. But Jack just said, "No, Jim, you don't need to be down there by yourself. You might get depressed." But he made me promise not to shoot another pig. I emptied onto the ground what was left of the deer. Bill Willett and some of them came down there later, and we all got scattered out along the river. I was by myself, and when I got back to where we parked, everybody was gone. Everybody figuring I'd gotten a ride with somebody else, I guess. Billy placed his big, blunt-fingered hand on the back of my neck, and warmth as from a campfire spread through my shoulders and along my arms. So that's why I walked all the way back from Matthews Bluff, and I'm beat all to hell and want to go to bed, and I'm sure I'm glad you're here because I think maybe I can get to sleep. If y'all will indulge me one more minute, there's one more short piece I want